Hi, y'all. This is Isaac, and today I want to talk about biblical relationships and some patterns and some principles that we can apply from those biblical relationships to our relationships today. So, first, I want to talk about Aquila and Priscilla. This is a couple where Jesus Christ was Lord in their home, and they based their lives around the furtherance of the gospel. So they weren't looking at their relationship as an escape from the discomforts of the world, but they were pushing each other on towards their higher calling. They used their home for the gospel. We can see that in Acts 18:24 through 26, when they took Apollos into their home and taught him about the gospel. So everything that this couple had, all the resources, their time together, they weren't just doing a bunch of nothing. They pushed each other and spurred each other on and kept that fire burning in their relationship for the gospel and Jesus Christ. So I think a takeaway from that relationship would be, what is the main pursuit in the relationship that you're in or the relationship that you want to be in? Why do you want to be in a relationship? Do you want a helper? Do you want a partner to help you further the gospel and better fulfill your calling? Or do you want somebody that's going to how can I say this? That's going to distract you from what God has placed you on this earth to do. So I think that's a good question. Let's look at David and Abigail. This comes from 1 Samuel 25. Abigail, David is getting ready to murder all of Nabal's family because he took care of Nabal's shepherds. He came during a time of celebration, and he's like, "Hey, Nabal, whatever you can give to your servants, I got a bunch of men with me. We were kind to your shepherds. We protected them. Whatever you can give to your servants would be appreciated." And he basically sends David away empty-handed. He sends the servants away empty-handed and disrespects David. So David is really angry. He's already going through it. The Lord told him he's going to be king, so he's waiting on that. And now this guy is disrespecting him, and David's a warrior. So David is like, everybody get your swords, and they're going up to go slaughter Nabal and his family. But Abigail, prompted by the Lord, is stirred up, gets a bunch of stuff, sends them ahead with a couple of servants, then goes to meet David herself. And when she meets him, she recognizes the calling that God has placed on his life. She prophesies to David. I don't know the exact wording, but it's something along the lines of, when you become the king of Israel, you're not going to have the guilt of innocent bloodshed on your hands and on your conscience. So let the Lord fight your battles. And the way she meets him, she appeases him. And he's turned away from all of his anger. So I think an interesting takeaway from that story is, does the person recognize what God has called you to do? Now, it doesn't have to be as soon as they look at you, they know. But God will give a grace to the person you're called to be with so that they can see that calling on your life and help you fulfill it. Okay, let's look at Adam and Eve. Genesis 2. The Lord puts Adam in the garden to work it, and then later, a couple of verses later, he sees that it's not good for man to be alone, and he creates Eve. What am I trying to say? Sometimes the Lord wants to make sure that you are doing something, walking in destiny, walking in purpose. And that's when he sees my son or my daughter needs a helper or a partner to fulfill, to better fulfill what I've called them to do. So some of our priorities are out of order. Sometimes we're looking for the relationship before we're even walking in purpose. We don't even know what we're created for, why God has placed us on this earth, but we're looking for a relationship. And we're going to see in a couple of other stories, it seems like through our work, God blesses us with relationships. And what I'm trying to say by that is in the midst of doing what you have to do, doing what God has called you to do, in the midst of responsibly attending to your affairs, the Lord is going to bless you with the person that He has for you. Amen. Okay, let's look at Ruth and Boaz. This follows the same example, another story with the same flow. Boaz is walking in the midst of his vineyard, in the midst of his crops, his field, where people are gleaning, people are picking, and he blesses them all. The Lord bless you, and they bless him back. And he notices Ruth, and he uses his influence and resources to be a blessing to Ruth before they even get together. So again, we see this man in the midst of his business, conducting his affairs fairly, efficiently, godly. He meets his future wife. Joseph from the Old Testament. He's in prison. He interprets the dream. He comes before Pharaoh. He impresses Pharaoh. Pharaoh gives him the position, and then he gets a wife. And I think that's Jacob and Leah. Last one. I knew there was one more. Jacob and Leah. Jacob works 7 years, and through his work, he gets his wife. Now, I'm not saying that you're working for a wife or you're working for a husband. But what I'm saying is get your priorities in order, focus on what is before you, do what the Lord has given you to do with your hands, do it as unto the Lord, and the Lord, should it be His will for your life, will bless you with that relationship in the midst of doing what you're supposed to do.